Have you ever noticed there's always that one person who somehow gets more done than an entire team? Everyone else is in meetings, replying to messages, bouncing ideas around, staying busy. And then there's this one person, quiet, off to the side, headphones in, door closed. They don't join every conversation. They don't sit in every call. They just work. And somehow, by the end of the week, they've produced more than 5 people combined. Now, most people look at someone like that and assume the worst. He's antisocial. She's a loner. They don't play well with others. They think they're better than everyone. But what if all of that is completely wrong? What if working alone isn't a flaw in their personality? What if it's the exact reason they outproduce everyone around them? Because here's the truth most people never figure out. The person who works alone and still outperforms the room isn't avoiding people. They've simply understood something the rest of the world refuses to accept. And once you see the psychology behind it, you'll never look at that quiet, high-output person the same way again.
Point 1. They protect their attention like it's their most valuable asset. For most people, attention is something they give away all day long. A message comes in, they answer it. Someone walks over to chat, they stop everything. A notification lights up, they check it. They live in a state of constant interruption and call it being busy. But the person who works alone treats attention differently. They know that deep work doesn't happen in fragments. It happens in long, unbroken blocks where the mind sinks all the way into the problem. Every interruption pulls them back to the surface, and getting back down takes time. And here's the part most people never realize. That cost isn't small. A single interruption doesn't steal 1 minute. It steals the 10 or 15 minutes it takes to climb back into deep focus afterward. Do that 20 times a day, and you've quietly destroyed hours without ever noticing. So they guard those blocks. They protect their focus the way other people protect their money. They say no to the quick call. They ignore the message that can wait. They're not ignoring you to be rude. They're protecting the one thing that actually produces results: uninterrupted concentration. And that single habit is why their output looks almost unfair. Point 2. They don't wait for permission, consensus, or company. Most people can't start until everyone agrees. They need the meeting. They need the approval. They need someone to tell them the idea is good before they'll touch it. And if no one's around, the work simply doesn't get done. The person who works alone removes all of that friction. They don't wait for a green light. They don't need a group to validate the direction. They don't need 3 people to confirm what they already know. They see what needs to be done, and they begin. Today, alone, without an audience. While everyone else is still scheduling a call to discuss the plan, this person has already finished a draft of it. While the group is still debating whether the idea is worth trying, they've already tested it and learned more than the meeting ever could. They've traded the comfort of group approval for the speed of independent action. And speed, repeated daily, compounds into something the rest of the room can't catch. One small head start every single day turns into a gap that eventually looks impossible to close. That's the quiet math of working alone. It doesn't look dramatic on any single day, but over months, it becomes a level of output nobody can keep up with.
Point 3. Their best thinking happens in silence. Not everyone thinks well out loud. Some people generate their sharpest ideas in noise, in conversation, in a crowded room. But others lose the thread the moment another voice enters. Their ideas form in quiet, in stillness, in the space where no one is talking. The person who works alone has learned this about themselves. They know that silence isn't empty for them. It's where the real work happens. In that quiet, they can hold a complex problem in their head, turn it over, and follow a thought all the way to the end without losing it. They can sit with a hard question long enough for the actual answer to surface, instead of grabbing the first easy one just to fill the silence. A crowded room scatters their mind. An empty room sharpens it, and they've stopped apologizing for that. They no longer force themselves to think in environments that drain them just to look like a team player. They've accepted how their own mind works and built their day around it. So they choose solitude, not because they hate people, but because solitude is literally where their brain performs at its peak. And when you let your mind run at its peak every single day, the results speak for themselves. Point 4. They take full ownership with nowhere to hide. There's something that happens in groups that almost nobody talks about. The bigger the group, the less responsible each person feels. If everyone owns the outcome, then in a strange way, no one does. The effort quietly spreads thin, and the work slows down. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it social loafing, the tendency for people to put in less effort when they believe others will pick up the slack. The person who works alone has no slack to lean on. There's no one else to blame, no one else to wait for,
No one else to carry the weight. If it gets done, it's because they did it. If it fails, it's on them. That total ownership creates a kind of pressure that most people avoid, but for them, it becomes fuel. They don't get to say, someone else was supposed to handle that. They don't get to hide inside the group and hope no one notices. Every result has their name on it, good or bad. And strangely, that's freeing, because when there's nowhere to hide, you stop making excuses and you start producing. You stop managing how things look and start focusing on whether things actually work. That clean line of responsibility, where effort and outcome belong entirely to one person, is exactly why their results are so consistent. There's no committee to slow them down, and no crowd to dilute the standard. Point 5. They refuse to confuse activity with productivity. Walk into most workplaces, and you'll see a lot of motion. People in back-to-back meetings, long email chains, status updates about status updates, conversations about work that somehow replace the work itself. It looks productive, it feels productive, but often it's just noise dressed up as effort. The person who works alone sees straight through that. They don't measure themselves by how busy they look or how many conversations they're part of. They measure themselves by one thing only: what actually got built today. They know that a calendar full of meetings can hide an empty week of real progress. They know that being in the loop on everything often means being responsible for nothing, so they happily skip the performance of being busy if it means they can finish something real. They'd rather produce one finished thing in silence than sit through 5 conversations about things that never get made. While the room is admiring its own activity, this person is quietly stacking finished work, one piece at a time. They've understood a hard truth that most people spend years avoiding. Looking productive and being productive are 2 completely different things, and they chose the one that counts, even when it makes them look less involved than everyone else.
Point 6. The work is where they feel most like themselves. For some people, work is just a way to earn a living, something they switch off the moment they can. But for the person who outproduces everyone, the work is something deeper. It's not just a task, it's a place. It's the one space where the noise of the world finally goes quiet, where there's nothing to perform, no one to manage, nothing to explain, just them and the thing they're building. In that focused state, they feel calm, they feel clear, they feel completely in control in a way the rest of their day rarely allows. The world outside can be chaotic, uncertain, exhausting, full of people pulling them in 10 directions and problems they can't solve. But inside the work, everything makes sense. There's a problem and there's a solution. And there's the quiet satisfaction of moving from one to the other with their own hands. That's why they protect it so fiercely. That's why they'll give up the social parts of the day without a second thought. For them, working alone isn't isolation. It's the 1 hour where they feel most like themselves. And when a person feels that way about their craft, output stops being something they force. It stops being a chore they drag themselves through. It becomes something they're drawn to, something they actually look forward to. And nothing on earth outproduces a person who genuinely loves the thing they disappear into. Conclusion: not antisocial, just undistracted. So the next time you see someone who works alone and somehow outproduces the whole room, don't assume they're cold. Don't assume they're disconnected. Don't assume they think they're above everyone else, because in reality, they might just be more focused, more independent, more accountable, and more in tune with how they actually do their best work.